50 years ago. Can it be? 50 years ago today was the final day of the 3-day music festival that defined a generation. Woodstock. 3 days of peace and music. August 16 through 18, 1969. I was there, you know. 11 years old, I went with my parents and my siblings. My dad took off his Air Force uniform and put on blue bell-bottoms, long-horn beads, headed out in the VW bus, painted all over with pink and green flowers. We went with a bunch of my father's Air Force buddies. Set up a commune on the farm. It was great. Just kidding. I was not there, and neither were most of the people who say they attended the festival. There were 400,000 people who were there, but there are more than 1 million who said they went. Maybe they intended to go. Maybe they got stopped in traffic. Among those who were not at Woodstock was Joni Mitchell. She was dating Graham Nash at the time of the festival, who did perform at the festival with his buddies Crosby, Stills, and Young. But Joni Mitchell, who had just become a pretty big thing, had a TV appearance that she could not get out of. So she didn't go, but after the event, she heard all about it from her boyfriend, Graham, and then wrote the iconic song, Woodstock. That sort of summed up what the festival was all about. We are stardust, we are golden, we are billion-year-old carbon, and we got to get ourselves back to the garden. Had she been there, Joni Mitchell, I imagine she would have performed the song that had made her so big in 1969 when it was recorded by her good friend Judy Collins. The song, Both Sides Now, which is a beautiful song, and it's about how the same thing can change depending on your point of view. Do we ever see the thing, or do we only see our perception of the thing? Some of you all may remember the song. The first verse, bows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way. But now, they only block the sun. They rain, they snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in the way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I would look at clouds at all. Cloud illusions I recall, not the cloud themselves. So often we see what we want to see. This week I was introduced to a concept that I had never, up until this very week, ever even thought about or entertained. I learned something new this week that changed my perspective. In doing some research on the passage that was so beautifully read to us just now, I found out that the people who know about such things, Bible researchers, believe that the Jesus of Galilee was not the peasant, marginalized drifter that we normally kind of picture him as. Jesus' birth narratives and some of the stories about his childhood in the Gospel of Luke make him out to be one who kind of emerged out of the common folks. Nazareth, after all, was a town with just one traffic light, maybe a post office, and a corporate gas and go mini-mart where the old Rexall drugstore used to be, the one with wooden floors and a soda fountain. Nazareth, which is where Jesus was from, wasn't much. He was out in the country. Can anything good come from Nazareth, is what we hear in the Gospel of John. I've always had the illusion of Jesus kind of coming out of nowhere, from out of the masses. But this this book of Hebrews looks at a different side of Jesus. It's a book sort of disguised as a letter, but it's really more of a sermon. I don't know if you've ever written a letter or an email that's really more of a sermon. Yeah, oh, you have. I think I did that for each one of our boys when they went off to college. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Things are good here. Now, let me tell you what I think you should be doing with your life for the next 4 years. Go to class. Sometimes sermons get disguised as letters. This book of Hebrews says it's a letter, but it's more of a sermon. And it makes pretty clear that the Jesus of Nazareth would most likely have been raised among the privileged of his time. He knew how to read, which suggests he was in close proximity to the scrolls, which would have been pretty rare. He knew the Torah, which suggests that he had a private education, and those don't come cheap. He was able to hold his own among the religious and social elite of his time. He was given an audience with people that ordinary peasants would just never have had a chance to speak to or even approach. Hebrews' illusion of Jesus is that he was probably among maybe even the 1%, that he was a person of privilege, and that he gave all of that up in order to follow his call, which for Hebrews is the essence of his sacrifice. Not just the cross, but that he gave all of what he had up to follow. Now, I'm not sure that makes a huge difference in who he was, but maybe it does. To be born in poverty and to rise out of your situation is one thing. To be born privileged and to give it up I think is something else. And this is how the book of Hebrews pictures Jesus. He's a three-piece suit guy that decides to throw away the suits and put on his jeans. He's the guy who's a CEO but wants to go to Woodstock. Which suggests that there is more than one way to picture this Jesus. Maybe Jesus is like that cloud in the sky. It can be observed from more than one side. The list our reader shared with us backs this view up as the one who gave it all up. These heroes that we heard about were all people who could have had it much easier had they not heard a call to drop everything and go a more difficult way. Moses had a cushy life in the house of Pharaoh, and he gave it all up to lead his people out of slavery. Rahab was part of the king's harem. We can presume she had a very comfortable life before she decided to be a co-conspirator with Joshua and all the soldiers. Gideon, Samson, Barak, Jephthah, they were all names that could inspire reverence because of what they gave up and left behind. The great King David, he could have been a shepherd all those years. The great Samuel. They were all like who Hebrews says Jesus was like. People who were doing okay and then decided to follow a higher call. Decided to climb that second mountain, the one that leads to personal meaning after vocational meaning has fallen away. Just like Jesus did. But then you gotta love this about the Hebrews, the heroes in the Hebrew Bible. Because they're all clouds, they're all multifaceted, they all have more than one side. They have their virtue, but they all have their flaws as well. That cloud of witnesses isn't all angel hair and ice cream castles, right? Remember, Moses had a wicked temper. He flew off the handle and killed somebody in Pharaoh's court, and he almost abandoned the whole project of the Exodus when he came down from the mountain and saw them worshiping the golden calf. Rahab made a living by violating that one commandment, commandment number 7, that one about adultery, and she violated it with impunity. Gideon wouldn't go into battle by himself, and we're told he always had to have Deborah by his side, which the Bible ironically sees as a weakness. David, what we know about David's flaws. This cloud of witnesses, impressive, revered, meant to inspire people to keep the faith. But they all had another side. It's almost as if the author of this beautiful piece of ancient literature chooses these characters very carefully to make the point that our cloud of witnesses will eventually, at one point or another, disappoint us. We will become disillusioned from time to time, even by the ones we adore. Our heroes will let us down. They will rain on us. But that cloud, that flawed cloud of witnesses, is still who we have to accompany us as we run the race that is set before us. Maybe the importance of looking to Jesus as the pioneer and perfecter of our faith is that when our cloud does disappoint, we won't become disillusioned and give up our own race. And so, people of God, hear the good news. Our cloud of witnesses, those who show up along the way, isn't great because they're perfect. They're great because they've been there for us, they're there for us now, and they will continue to be there for us. Both sides of them to run alongside of us, that together we might understand more deeply that to endure the cross of sacrifice for people we love, to give it up for people who mean something to us, is to take our seat at the right hand of God. Today, as we gather around this table, offered to us by Jesus when he was so close to the finish line, let's bring along both sides of ourselves and of those who've been part of our cloud. Shall we